What's up, Zoe? No. You're about to listen to me do this Zoom meeting, though, for a class for 2 hours, so it's going to be fun. I'm not going to pay even a lick of attention to it. Poor students. Whatever. You're not the teacher, are you? Are you fucking retarded? How fucking stupid can you be? No, I'm doing this class. Fuck do I look like teaching a fucking class for? Think I give a shit about children? Fuck them. I'm just joking. Fuck kind of class would I teach? Get real. Holocaust Denial 101. I'm just kidding. Red pill class for idiots. You know what, Zoe? If you weren't a fat fucking freak, I would actually think you were okay. But your BMI was not good, so I can't entertain you and take you seriously. If you don't like me, that's a good sign I'm on the right path. Well, you're in a big basket, so I wouldn't take that as a sign for anything, really. I should probably put a shirt on before I get into this fucking class because they might ask to turn the camera on. I don't want people to see my titties out. You don't need pants for Zoom now. I'm gonna keep the pants on. Starting.
Recording in progress.
Good evening. Can y'all hear me? Thumbs up if you could hear me. Awesome, thank you. Alright, welcome to tonight's class. Hope you all had a good weekend. So just a quick reminder that project 1 is due this time. I believe most of you already submitted that, so good job there. Again, with the projects, to get the maximum amount of points, submitting them on time is important. You do lose a bit of points for every day that it is late. It looks like everybody's on top of that today, which is awesome. We're going to get started here really shortly. Just wanted to take some attendance really quick, and then we'll kick off tonight's festivities. Tonight we'll be covering essentially one of the exercises I wanted to kind of go over in class, which is the creating some prototype exercise, because that skill is very important as you go through the course. Being able to prototype is going to be important. So we'll do that in class together today.
He's so quiet.
Also, want to spend some time on the overview of Project 2, kind of what that entails, and kind of kicking that off tonight. And then, time permits, want to spend some time taking a look at Module 2 and kind of what is coming up in the next few weeks. So I'm going to go ahead and just take attendance really quick here, and then I'll kick things off. While I do that, any questions about Project 1 or anything else so far that you want to ask? So far, looks like we have no questions so far. That's fine. So we're gonna hop into that activity here in just a little bit. Everybody's almost here.
Here we go.
Cool. Let's hop into the activity. So if you are following along in Blackboard, you're going to be looking at under Module 1, there is a activity called Create a Simple Prototype. So I'm going to share my screen. And we'll kind of look at that together here and kind of work through that activity. So go ahead and pull up Figma. We'll kind of do this one together. Share my screen here really quick. Alright, can everybody see my screen? Okay. Alright, so I'm gonna hop into so in Blackboard here under Module 1, there is a section here for the exercise, which is this first one. So open that, you should have access to a document here. So essentially one of the first things you're going to do is you're going to download the zip file. So you should be able to download the zip file here. Let me see if I can get that to you. Here. So over here, you're going to download that file.
Dude, it sounds like he's talking like ASMR.
And I should pull those into your local file section under
Yeah, it's a class.
computer. Is everybody able to download that that folder and unzip it? That folder. Anybody have issues downloading that?
good?
We're going to change the name to my first prototype, so I'm going to do that next here. Clicking on this section up here and changing that name to my first prototype. Now my file should be called my first prototype. So far, so good. Alright. Next thing we're going to do now is we're going to select the frame tool and we're going to pick the tablet iPad mini preset. So I'm going to go down here to the frame tool at the bottom here.
This is fucking boring.
I should see the different frame options here to the right. I'm going to select the one for a tablet. And then I'm going to look for the iPad mini. I believe the option here is the iPad mini 8.3. So I'm going to click on that. And now I should have the iPad mini frame here in my Figma file. Next I'm going to do is I'm going to rename that frame to home. So I'm going to click in here to the frame layer, double click in that, and I'm going to change that to home. Now I should have the home name changed here. Then from here I want to rotate it to landscape. I'm going to be able to do this using the options in the design panel. So in the design panel to the right here, under this rotation section here, if I hover over this one, this has a 90-degree right rotation. So if I click that, it should rotate my entire frame 90 degrees and get me to that landscape view. Once I do that, the next thing I want to do is I want to duplicate the frame twice and name the new frames page 1 and page 2. So the quickest way to duplicate is going to zoom out here, holding command and scrolling out my mouse key.
I don't even know what we're doing.
Click and hold option over that first frame.
Literally, what's happening right now?
I should be able to quickly create another one here.
I just came in here and I have no idea what we're doing.
Sorry, could you show how you turn the frame again?
Sure. So if you click on the frame and select it to the right here, you should see the position properties here on the right. Do you see that in your Figma file?
What the fuck are you talking about?
Yes.
And then hover over this one.
Like the fuck's happening?
Say rotate 90 degrees. Do you see that?
Yeah, I got it. How'd you get the second screen? I lost that.
So
Even this guy's
screen,
lost.
What I did is I selected it and I held option and I got that duplicate arrow to show up here. If you hold, you'll see like a little white arrow kind of.
School is so dumb.
That just indicates that you're going to duplicate that selected frame. And then if you hold down the option key and left mouse key and drag, it should create a duplicate of that.
Don't you feel more smarter now?
Thank you.
No problem. Alright, so going back to the instructions here, once you do that, we're going to rename them here. So let's say it says we need to name new frames page 1 and page 2. So I'm going to click on the second one here. In the layers panel, I'm going to change that one to page 1. And the second one, I'm going to click here. And I'm gonna
What are we
rename that one
doing?
page
What the
2.
fuck is this? What is he even talking about? You feel sleepy?
Now I should have 3 frames, one called home, one called page 1, and one called page 2 in my file.
School's for girls, bro. Like at this point,
Now,
it's not.
this is go
It's
to
not
the
even like
Figma
to.
logo menu and
to be
choose
smart. It's
style,
just
place,
to-
image.
It's just to give something for girls to
Select
do
the
in society.
images. So I think in here it says cows. So a little bit of confusion there. I think they updated that from cows to different images. So if you see that, don't be alarmed.
I'm being serious.
Those are no
It's
longer
just
cows.
boring as fuck.
That's what you're looking for in that photo.
This is something like a girl would do.
So I'm going to click this first one here. Let's go back to the instructions really quick. We're going to place an image in one of the frames. So
That's how I feel watching this
first
shit.
exercise, if you wanted to like bring in an image, the quickest way to do that is you want to go to the properties panel to the right, and you're going to click on this little square for fill. And you click on
You
fill,
just
and
say
you're gonna see
whatever.
this new menu pop up, and then you're going to select the one for image.
Because this is like pointless. Like, what are we doing here?
Click that image tab. It's going to give you the option to upload from a computer. and then when you click that, you should be able to select that file. So mine is here under downloads for mine. I'm going to click into that one, and I'm just going to pick any one of these images here.
I don't even know what he's talking about. He just like started the class, fucking just start doing some shit. I'm like, what is this?
Fill off that first image in that homepage. Everybody following along so far?
No, I'm not. What? I'm a little lost, man. Can you go back for real quick? So I downloaded the 3 images, right? So I got to that part. I'm in Figma right now. So how do I get the images into Figma for the prototype? That's what I'm lost on.
Okay, what do you have on your screen right now?
So I'm using a second monitor, but basically I have the 3 downloaded images from Zip Extractor, and I'm on Figma right now. So how do I get the images from the Zip Extractor to Figma?
So have you unzipped the files? You see like 3 different images?
Yeah, I see the 3 different images. I'm extracting them to Drive, so those are gonna be good now on my Drive. So do I just put those images now up into Figma?
So to get them to Figma, you want to make sure you select that frame first. So for that first one, if you select the home frame to the right in the properties panel, you'll see a fill. So if there's nothing in there, you'll see like fill, and you see like the hex codes for fill. Do you see that in your Figma file?
So let me see here. Am I making like a whole new design file, or am I just is there like a work file in the images folder I just downloaded?
So you should have a file called My First Prototype in Figma right now, and then 3 frames. Do you have that?
Let me see. Where would that be at?
So you have to make a new file first. So what I did was I made a new project, and then I made a new file inside of that.
Okay.
Design file.
Okay.
So did you get that far?
So I'm in the untitled, yep. I'm in a new untitled project, yep.
Okay. Do you have a project called Exercises in your Figma file?
Exercises? No, I don't see that.
So you'd have to make one of those. Let's see here. You mind sharing your screen? Let's take a look.
So I can't share my screen because I'm using a laptop and a desktop right now. So I'm on my desktop so I won't be able to share it from that point.
Okay. So what do you see right now on your screen?
So I see just I'm on Figma. I'm on the untitled. It's basically just a blank slate. There's nothing in it. It's just page 1, file, assets.
Okay. Do you see the option to create a new file? The top right, like a blue button that says create.
Let me see. Create new file. No, I see design, fig jam, slides, buzz, site, make. Then when I click on new file, I click design, and I'm in this new untitled work project.
Yep. So that's fine. And then you want to rename that one to My First Prototype. So if you click the top left section where it says untitled, you should be able to change the name.
All right.
My First Prototype.
I got My First Prototype in there.
Okay.
All right. So far, so good.
Okay. And then the next thing you want to do is you want to click the frame tool. So at the very bottom of Figma, there should be a frame tool.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
Yep, you click on that, you'll see the menu for the different sizes, and then you're going to pick the one that's called tablet.
Okay.
And then pick the top one that's called iPad Mini.
8.3?
Yep, that one.
Okay.
And then it's going to put a new frame on your main file.
Got it, yep.
And then you're going to rename that first one that you just made home. So if you click the frame to the left where the layers panel is, you're going to change the name, double click where it says
iPad Mini.
Yep.
Change it to home. Okay.
And then you're going to rotate it. Do you remember how to rotate it?
No. What do you mean rotate?
If you click the frame again, that should be called home now, to the right in the position properties, you'll see that one is called rotation. There's one that has like a little diamond in it, so rotate to the right.
Yep.
You click that, you should rotate your frame.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right, so then now you should have that rotated home frame, but you only have one of them.
Correct.
The next thing you want to do is you want to duplicate that twice. So are you on a Mac?
I am on a PC actually.
On a PC. So I think for PC it should be Control.
Okay.
If you hold down Control, you should see your pointer change to show the duplicate option. It looks like a little white arrow behind the regular black pointer.
Control D.
No, just Control.
Oh.
Does it do anything on yours?
Well, I did I did Control at first, but then when I did Control D, it duplicated it. So.
Okay, well that works too.
Yeah.
So you want to duplicate it again because you need to have 3 frames.
Okay, I got 3. Yep.
Oh, okay, and then you're going to rename the next 2 page 1 and then page 2.
All right, perfect. Like it. Looks good.
All right, and then when you select the first one called Home, to the right in the Properties panel, you'll see a fill.
Yeah.
A fill section in there.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Click that little square where the white box is.
Uh-huh.
It's going to pull up another menu, and then you're going to click on I believe it's the 4th one over, and it should be called Image.
Yep. Upload from
You
computer.
click that. Yep, there you go. And then you just select one of those images that you unzipped.
All right, I think I'm all up to date. Thank you so much.
Sure. All right. Cool. All right, so we'll continue on here. So from there, I've uploaded that image. I've done the fill for that first one. Now the next thing we're going to do here, according to the instructions, is we're going to, let's see here.
Easy peasy.
We're going to place the images in each
Damn,
frame.
one nice
so
guy.
I have the first one already for home. I'm going to select the second one. I'm going to follow the same procedure. I'm going to hit the fill square, go to image, upload from computer, and I'm going to select that second one, which should be that orange one in my file here, and that should put a orange one in the page 1 section. And these could be any ones you want, not necessarily the orange one. I'm just doing that for my specific exercise. And I'm going to go to page 2 and follow the same thing again. Click in that fill here, go to image, upload from computer, then I'm going to select that 3rd image. And now I should have the images on my main canvas here, home, page 1, and page 2. Everybody following along so far? All right, awesome. So once we do that, that is essentially that first part. So now what we're going to do is we're going to essentially start to create what we call a prototype. So how Figma works is essentially the prototype is when you create a prototype, you're essentially linking different frames together, and that simulates the screens that somebody would see essentially. So they're like clicking through like a website or an application.
Easy.
It's a very simple way to kind of like illustrate that this is the path somebody's taking when they click on something to get to another
Yeah, I had no idea what he was talking about. He hit the ground running.
So what we're going to do here,
So now I'm up. Now I know
we're
what
going
to do.
to on-select all the objects and change the design panel to right and go to the prototype menu. So right now I'm in the design menu. Go to the top right here. This tab says design. I'm going to change to prototype. Once I click on the top right to prototype, I'm going to notice now that I have a different menu for prototype. When I hover over each one of these frames, you'll notice now that there is a little circle selector here on the different edges of that. Essentially, those different frames together.
That's what I'm doing.
Prototype. So if I go back to the instructions here, I'm going to click that first circle for home. If I click that and hold with my mouse key and drag it over, you'll now notice there's a little blue arrow here. That's just indicating that I'm going to be essentially connecting these two together. Once I do that, I'm going to get a little menu here that says a few different options. There'll be an option for what's called a trigger, and that simply means what the person needs to do the prototype for it to change to the next screen. So right now it's set to on tap. There's a few options in here you can pick from. There is on drag while hovering, while pressing. There's one for like gamepad, keypads, mouse enter, mouse leave, etc. We're going to stick to the first one here, which is on tap. Below that, there's an action that will happen once that person clicks. Options would be navigate to, which would be navigate to the next screen that you've pointed to. You could go back, you could scroll to something specific, open a link, and there's a few other more advanced options in here. We're going to leave it on navigate to, and then destination, you notice it says page 1 because I've dragged the arrow from my home page to page 1. So that should be one of the options. There's also an option to go to page 2 if I would like as well. I'll leave that one on page 1. And then animation, there's a few different options here. You can either go to instant or it just automatically goes there without any kind of animation. You could have it dissolve. You could have it smart animate, where essentially it creates like a smooth transition between pages. You can have it move in, move out, and a few other options here.
I'm just thinking about how funny it'd be if I just like showed my ass to the screen right now.
Going back to the instructions here,
but I don't want to get banned off Twitch.
From page 2 to page 3. So I'm going to select page 1 here again, and then go to that little circle here and drag it over, and that should create that same interaction between page 1 to page 2. So now we should essentially have a working prototype. So a quick way to kind of test your prototype is at the top right here, you'll notice there is a little play icon here. If I click that play icon, one more thing I'm actually going to do here before I change that over is I'm going to change this to landscape. Right now you notice it says iPad mini and it has the portrait view. I'm going to change that to the landscape view so that when I go to the prototype, it kind of matches the same direction as these. So now I'm going to press the little play button here, and it should load a different screen with what looks like a iPad on screen. And then when I click it, it should jump to page 1. If I click it again, it should jump to page 2. So far, so good. Or is everybody able to get that to work?
I guess, bro.
Awesome. The cool thing about this prototyping feature is you could also add additional things here. Right now, if you notice to the left here, it says like flow 1. As you get to more complicated designs, you can set up multiple flows in your designs, and then you could essentially see all of them here. You could add like descriptions if you want to your flows. There's different settings in here that you could also pick from. You could make it responsive. You could have it have a fixed size. You could add a few different options here as well. You could also hide the UI, which kind of hides the stuff around it and just kind of focus on that screen. So pretty neat here. Let's hop back over to that main page here. So I believe that should complete that exercise. Again, it's creating a very simple prototype for you to kind of get your feet wet with the idea of prototyping, and then as we get more complex ones, there'll be more things we'll be able to do. I believe by project 7, we'll be doing a few more like advanced animation transitions as well, and then do some other more advanced things in prototyping. But for now, it should at least get your feet wet with that ability to do that. So definitely do some more, play around with prototyping as much as possible. Because as you get to more advanced projects, you will be doing a lot more complex prototyping exercises and projects. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing here. If anybody has any questions about what we just covered, feel free to send me a message here. What I want to do now is spend some time
Oh, we're getting too low there.
kind of going over the next project, which is going to be project 2. So going back into Blackboard, project 2 is still a part of module 1, and that one is due on the 18th. So you have a little bit more time on that one. That project does require a little bit more research to kind of complete. And so I'm going to kind of go over the overview of what it is, and then there are some resources as well that kind of get you started on project 2. But essentially the idea is for project 2 is you're going to be creating examples or adding examples of different design principles into different pages. So I'm going to do the overview of what it is first, and then I'm going to hop into Figma here for a little bit to kind of show you how to kind of get that set up, and then we'll go from there. So let me share that project 2 here on my screen. All right, everybody should be able to see my screen here. Thumbs up if you can see it. project 2, again, it's a little bit more research heavy than the last project.
Great.
Essentially what you're going to be doing here is you're going to be creating a design file in Figma, and then there will be these 8 specific design principles, and you'll be adding examples of each one of those. So there are some videos here that kind of go over the different principles that you'll have to watch. This first one is pretty long, so you have to take some time to watch that, about 35 minutes. There are a few other articles here that kind of go over the design principles here that will be a part of the 8. They won't cover every single one of these in a certain order, but each one will have like at least a few of the different principles in there. So watch those first to kind of get up to speed on kind of what those are. And then once you do that, the next step is to hop into Figma, which I'm going to do here now, and then kind of show you how to get that file basically set up here. So let me click on this link here, and then should take me into Figma. Can you all see my screen still? Okay, awesome. So what it's going to do is it's going to launch Figma, and it's going to launch a Project 2 starter file for you. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're not going to use its original file. It is locked down, and so you have to actually make a duplicate of this file, and then you're going to be working off that duplicate of the file for your Project 2. So the first thing you're going to do here is you're going to click into this little arrow drop down next to the file name, and you're going to look for the duplicate to your drafts here first. Once you click that, you're going to pick essentially your team, which you don't have one team in your file. It's going to create a copy of that file for you. It's going to be called Project
Don't worry about it, Zoe.
Starter file copy. You're going to change that name from Project 2 Starter file copy to your name, and then dash or slash project. So same like before, when you name a file, you're going to give it a name. I'm going to call mine Morris, and then we're going to hit a little icon there for the dash, and then I'm going to say Project 2. And this will be your file that you're working on for Project 2. So far, so good. All right. Was everybody able to make a duplicate of that file in Figma? Anybody not able to? All right, we'll continue here. Awesome. So then the next thing you're going to do is you'll notice that in this file, once you make a duplicate, there are going to be some pre-built pages for you. The first page is going to have the instructions of what you're going to be doing. But essentially what you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking for a website of your choice. And then what you're going to be doing is you're going to be putting examples of the different design principles into each page. So if you look at this menu to the left here, for different pages, you have the instruction page here. You'll have what website did you select. This is just a placeholder. Your goal is to go find a website that you like, take a screenshot of that, and replace this image that's available in the template with the image of a website you like. So that will be your second page, what website you selected. It should be the screenshot of the website you're going to be using for your example of the different principles. Once you do that, what you're going to be doing here is you're going to be, for each one of these pages, you're going to be adding an example. This example page that's available here is really just for you to kind of see how to present each one. So for each one of these pages, you should have, or you should be able to copy one of these page info frames here. It should include your name, the name of the principle, and the definition of that principle. The examples from, you should have the website that you picked, the URL here. And then to the right of that, for each one of those principles, you're going to be using annotations for that. So you can either use red text if you want. You could use, depending on the principle.
Yo, look at that mold.
You could use lines here.
Ew.
Figma also does have a new annotation tool available here. It's called annotation. So if you click down here where it says comment, then click the arrow, there is an annotation tool. So I kind of leave it up to you which ones you want to use. The goal is you want to have an example for each of the principles. So each one will have like an image of the website and why it adheres to that principle. And then you're going to be adding in like annotations, kind of explaining why this example represents a certain principle. So an example here is they're talking about alignment. So they have, the red line to kind of indicate like this content is aligned, based on, the principle is aligned to the left here. They also talked about how it aligns, horizontally and vertically in their example. Over here, they have another example of that from that same website. It's a different page, and it talks about like why that page follows the alignment principle. So for each one of the principles, you're required to have 3 examples of each. So you'll have the first box again will have your name, the name of the principle, and the definition of the principle, and the website, and then 3 examples from that website, and then you should be annotating why it meets that principle, and then if it's required or if it's necessary, for example, for alignment, you're probably gonna have to show a little red line somewhere. But some of these just require like notation, like visual hierarchy, a little bit different. However you want to kind of talk to that in a certain way. But you'll be adding one for alignment, one for visual hierarchy, one for contrast, one for repetition, one for proximity, one for balance, one for similarity, and one for space. So far, so good. Is that making sense so far?
Should we use one website for all of these, or a different website for each category?
It's a lot less work to use one website, but I'll leave it up to you if you want to, come up with 8 different sites for each one. Just ensure that if you do use more than one website, on this first page where it says what website would you select, you would need to include that screenshot each one of those ones you use.
Perfect, thank you.
Sure. And on the very last page here where it says thumbnail, this is where you're going to be essentially creating a thumbnail of your project. The thumbnail, you have a little freedom here with what you want to do with this thumbnail. Then you can add designs if you want to it. The main goal is it needs to have project 2 in there. And then if you want to add a name to that thumbnail, those are your requirements for the project 2, your name, and then whatever else you want to do here, I'll leave it up to you. Take some creative liberties here to update this thumbnail page. And so that in a nutshell is project 2. That is what to do on the Any other questions about that one?
Does the thumbnail have to be a particular size, just like the size of that frame?
Yes, so whatever thumbnail you pick, just making sure that it fits inside of that frame. So kind of similar to before, if you want to click fill and add an image, background image, it's up to you. Whatever you want to do, be able to keep it inside of that frame for each size. All right, any other questions? Alright, if not, what I want to do here is, miss anything else, again, make sure you watch that video. It's pretty long, so spend some time watching that video, covering these different links. And I'm actually going to go ahead and click on one of them here. So, this first link is actually pretty useful. It's kind of almost like a cheat sheet. It doesn't have every single one based on that list, but it has enough on here to get you started. So it gives you like this cheat sheet with the different principles, like scale, repetition is on here, balance is on here. There's a few other ones. Then below, you kind of expand a little bit more the examples of how those apply. So this one has a few of those principles on here. The second one from usertesting.com. gives you some of those desktop principles that we covered last week in the presentation.
How much did you pay
There's
for the
similarity
class?
Here,
Not enough.
continuity, and a few other ones. So definitely read through this one as well. Look through the principles, and then on the very last one here, there's some additional ones. So you get this here within that video, the very first video ever, said all the principles. I just remember to use get a definition of the principles file. So on that very first page, you'll have that box kind of set up there. And the quickest way to do that, I would say, is just to copy this to your new frame. So you just copy this first one and go to alignment in your file, just paste it, replace your name. It's almost like a giveaway because you already have that one already here. And then from there, just create the other frames for your examples to go into. And then for the rest of them, again, just kind of follow that same procedure. Just copy and paste the frame. So you have that frame there, the correct size, and then just add your visual hierarchy on there. So if I go to visual hierarchy and paste it, I would just change the name here. My name, and then for the project name, which is project 2. And I'll change this to visual hierarchy. Remember, if it's too small, just kind of click out of here, just drag it over. And that replaces with the definition of visual hierarchy, and then it's like principle here. Ready for everyone to The cool thing about Figma is if you have numbered frames, you copy and drag. Should speed up a little bit for you. Alright. We have a few weeks to do that one. Next is when his teams give some time to kind of carry that one in. Alright. Any questions?
No questions, Teach. No questions. Thank you.
I'm looking forward to seeing what y'all did with Project 1. So what I want to do now is I'm going to hop over and start to walk y'all through Module 2 a little bit. So we'll start that a little bit and then we'll take a little break here once I get through that, and we'll come back. We'll hop into the wireframing lecture if you have some time. And then I think that'll be enough for tonight. So let me hop into Blackboard
Would you mind if I approach you
Module 2 here.
with this song? Would you care if I had watched you? How very long that I've watched you from afar. And now right here you are, so close to me. Now I know it isn't proper to insist, but my
Anybody
heart
try to attempt the pencil exercise?
heart would not allow me to resist. So forgive me if I am bold, but my story must be told close to you.
I'll confess I didn't, and then I ran into a problem with part 3 of Project 1, which is like couldn't draw the handle for the magnifying glass. Like I just couldn't get it. I mean I got it eventually, but I still kind of don't know what I did to get it right. So yeah, I class, I didn't watch that, and I regret. I regret it.
Yeah, these exercises are in here for a reason. So I think the pen tool, that one, would give you a little bit more, I would say.
Where's Letitia's fat fucking ass at?
You got through that
Where are
part.
my fat bitches?
So
Fat bitches rise up.
do these
Fat
exercises
bitches rise.
as possible and watch those videos and just practice too.
Zoe and Letitia, raise your hands up.
Master those basics of the different tools. All right. So
While you said practice, can I just ask really quickly? Is there, you may have said this in the materials to start the semester, but is there like a can I just go to Figma's website if I just want to do practice exercises?
If I just want to do
just
practice, can I
randomly
just go on
kind of
Figma's website and suck my dick?
get chops? Is there a good resource to do that? Is Figma the best one or something else?
yeah,
Figma,
Figma's a
more like
pretty
Ligma.
good resource for.
Lick my balls, bro.
use Figma.
Figma balls.
Okay, let me just go to their website really quick here. I'll share my screen once I find it.
It's also something you can answer in a DM or something. I don't want to take up class time.
No, please take up class
We
time.
don't need to.
We got 2 fucking hours, bro.
Now we have some time.
Yeah, we got a lot of time. We got all the time, really. Are you kidding me?
So
We got all the
share that
time.
really quick here.
We need all the time, bro.
So if you search for Figma Knowledge Base, there's a Figma Learn page. There's a bunch of different resources here you could kind of use. There's some main getting started documentation, like finding your way around Figma basics here. You could also go into more specific things in here. So like how to design different things, how to create illustrations, etc. There's a ton of different projects here if you kind of go through and follow along. There's also some more advanced like knowledge stuff in here, like auto layout, components, which we talked about a little bit last week, prototyping as well. So it's really the sky's the limit, how far you want to go down that rabbit hole. There's practice guides in here too. Usually the practice guides sometimes will give you like files you can download into your own Figma software, and then you can like follow along with the different like tutorials there as well. So, definitely recommend that you go in there and in your free time and peruse around here. I think it's called Figma Learn. I'll put a link in the chat here for everyone to see it. Check that out if you want some more in-depth Figma resources.
Do you think you could make an announcement in the Blackboard class for that?
Yes, let me do that really quick here. Let's post that in the announcement section.
Also, I have one quick question.
Sure.
The cheat sheet thing with the different designs and everything, or like different explanations. You're
Okay,
showing
I'm
it.
You mean the exercise we're working on, or something else? Are you
Yeah,
talking about
for project 2.
okay, for project 2, yes. What was your question about that?
Where do you
So, project 2, did you get to the section about the starter file?
instructions?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you go to instructions and then you click on the starter file, it should load a starter file into Figma for you, and then you have to make a duplicate of that.
Oh no, I got that part. So there was like a website you showed. You said it was like a cheat sheet.
Oh, so those are actually in the instructions as well too. So the project 2 Google Doc file, at the very top there's like 4 different links and stuff. So while
Okay.
watch in here, yeah,
Perfect.
yeah, yeah. So that's where you find that stuff. Alright. Any other questions before I pull up module 2? I just posted a link in the announcements here. I'll send it out if you want to learn. Hop back into Blackboard. Share my screen again. Alright, can you all see my my screen. Alright, so looking ahead here at Module 2, we'll be diving into more of the world of UI design through wireframing. So this module will cover essentially things to do with wireframing. Let's hop into the overview really quick here. So the overview for this one essentially is, in this module you'll see how small UI elements can be combined to create larger components. So the idea with components is they're building blocks for bigger components, and so you learn how to kind of start with UI elements, now you can kind of like build components from that. You also get a better handle of Figma components. We did a little bit of that last week with like kind of one stuff, so kind of building on that idea of components. You also become familiar with the concept you'll be able to recognize most components patterns from this Figma, and then you learn how to build a wireframe and all the screens for an existing app. So you kind of build on that idea of components and then use those to make like screens module. The objectives here is to create a wireframe at the right fidelity. So we'll start with the low fidelity stuff, work our way up from there. You're looking at identifying these UI elements and components for UI design. Update functional requirements for a project. Create functional requirements, create visual designs that meet or exceed requirements. Categorize UI elements and components for design. And organize the project file to best facilitate design. There is a link here with the article to read, which kind of talks about how to wireframe in Figma. There's a blog post by Figma that kind of goes over what it takes to kind of wireframe, like what a wireframe is, the different types of wireframes, wireframing is one of those basic requirements schools kind of like master a lot of times the idea is start it's the idea of start with the wireframe representation of your layout and so the wireframe is meant to be essential to get into the UX world. And then outside of that, there's different what we call fidelities of wireframing. So there's like low fidelity, so I just showed you. There's also high fidelity. High fidelity is when it gets pretty close to what the final version will look like. Sometimes you hear a term fixed fidelity, where you usually have almost final elements. You'll have like the correct words might be in there, the image might be in there, it might still be grayscale, but it's usually a lot closer to this final version here. So you have like real words, you'll have components and stuff that look like what you see in the final version. It might be missing images and colors, but then it's fidelity. The high fidelity is to be a representation of like the final version, and mentioning some colors in there, right words, right images, icons, etc. So there's an article to read here that kind of goes over the different things to consider for making a wireframe. And then back to the contents. There's some videos again you can watch. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 videos in here. So you can spend some time in class to watch those videos. You're up to speed with wireframing components as well. And then there are essentially a couple of lectures in here. There is one activity video, and then the Figma components video. Just wanted to know if that was
Awesome. Thanks.
sure. Any other questions? Let's go ahead and take a real break here, and then we'll get back. Let's get back here at 7. Okay. When we get back, we'll put our
Recording stopped.
Oh, we're on a 15-minute break. Bet. Oh. Phew, that was a lot of learning. Hey homie, I can share your stream in a Kick community to help you hit 200 followers, 800 followers, and earn $1,500 per stream. Add me on Discord. I'd rather be broke. I would rather be broke than to do business with a bot. I guess Letitia's fat ass left the stream. She couldn't handle all this education. She couldn't handle the education being had right now. You, only you, can make all this change in me. For it's true, you are my destiny. 'Cause when you hold my hand, I understand the magic that you do. You're my dream come true, my one and only you. All right. We got one viewer on YouTube and one viewer on Twitch. That's how you know. Cause when you hold my hand, one good viewer is all you need. Shut up and send me your tits, bitch. This motherfucker never came back. Oh, shit. Has it been 15 minutes yet? This 15-minute thing turned into 20. I don't think he's coming back. Do you have a Discord? I used to have a Discord once upon a time. Once upon a time I had a Discord. But then I deleted it. Bro, if this guy like takes any longer, I'm gonna give him till like 7:15. I'm leaving. Oh, here he is. Keep your secrets then. I don't have secrets. I'm an open book.
Alright, everybody, 7:10, time to come back.
I sent you a whisper. Didn't you see it?
Recording in progress.
Make sure here.
This is so fucking lame. The class is kind of pointless, to be honest. These Zoom meetings, like everything he gives us is like in the project like description. Like you can just like read the fucking things and be done with it. You know, you just here to kind of like facilitate shit. I guess I don't know.
Excuse me, sir? Hello? Yeah, excuse me, sir?
Let me know when you can see it.
Excuse me, sir?
The way she says "sir" is crazy. Sure. You can't hear her. Yo, teach.
Alright, can y'all see my screen?
You can't reply to the DM. Why not?
Thumbs up if you could see the lecture. Awesome. Alright, so we're going to be talking about wireframing. We'll start from the beginning.
Try now.
So again, wireframing is about designing without details. And the reason why wireframing became pretty popular was this idea that as a designer, you want to be able to share ideas pretty easily. One of the problems you kind of run into when you're designing and you're sharing ideas is if you start with too much detail, sometimes people get caught up in the things that don't matter as much yet. So they might get, distracted by a certain color choice or, certain images, certain other details that might not be as important yet. And so you want to make sure that you've presented those ideas at a high level first, then start to add the details much later. That way you don't end up in a situation where people are like getting too distracted and not focused on the solution that you're trying to solve for. Looks like somebody had a question here. Sue, did you have a question?
Yes, excuse me, sir. Do you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. I know that we have to record for the Zoom meeting on the Blackboard, but whenever I try to get in that, they only ask for me for the code to get in the record video. So I don't know if we can be able to watch the record.
So you're saying when you tried to watch the recording for the class, it wasn't yet enter a code?
Yes, they only ask for the code.
Okay, I'll have to double check in that. Maybe it's a setting I need to change in there for that to work. So I'll do that and then I'll get back to you. And I'll send you a message later. Make sure that works.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. Any other questions before I hop back into the lecture? All right. Well, let's continue here. So again, this idea of sharing an idea, but sharing in a way that doesn't kind of like distract the people you're sharing your ideas with, by essentially using a wireframe. So this presentation will kind of cover a few different things here. The spectrum of design fidelity, and that idea of going from like low fidelity designs to high fidelity at the end. What wireframes are, some more about component-based design, which we'll get into a lot more as we progress through next week. And this idea of layout grids. Layout grids are essentially creating what I call the scaffolding of the design. Where you have your grids, you can drop stuff into your grids, and then that way your designs look as neat as possible. You're eager to kind of like get the layout stuff. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about the process of kind of creating a design, a great design, what that means. So if you look at this example here, there are a few different, we like to call the fidelities, or the fidelity spectrum when it comes to designs. So we have our sketch, which is usually where I like to start still, kind of going from an idea in your brain to a rough idea of what you want it to look like. So having your sketch here is important. This usually comes out of like a brainstorming session or some other way of getting the ideas together. From there, you want to move to a wireframe. So again, a wireframe is usually either grayscale or blue scale, kind of like single color or shade, where you start to drop in like the ideas a little more refined, what it would look like. You may not have actual text in there yet. You might have like fake text. Image placeholders might be in there as well. Representations of like images, which is usually you see that little box with the X in it. It's like a representation of an image. You might have other like icons and elements in there as well. From there, you go to what's called a high fidelity. High fidelity is essentially the close what the final version will look like. So it will have the right colors, images will be in there, the way the icons will be in there. Actual words will be on the screen. And then from there, you'll have what's called a high fidelity prototype. Now, prototype, you see the mock-up of a prototype is kind of, that the prototype is something that a user can kind of click through to test. So if you go back to the prototype example we did earlier, or project or exercise rather, the idea of adding that prototype where you can click through stuff is the final version of that. Usually what I said before that, it'll just be a static mock-up where it won't be clickable, but you're still like showing the screen what they will look like to your stakeholders. And again, the wireframe is kind of where we focus most of our time on this lecture. So again, this idea of creating or designing the layouts, putting in the representations of images, where words to go, just to kind of get that idea out of your head and away from like a sketch into something a little more refined and presentable to stakeholders. Alright, so again, a wireframe is something you create at the beginning stage of a design project. After you gather your research, get inspiration and align on the business goals. So usually you're working with stakeholders. You might be a business, so they're going to have their own business goals you have to meet. You might be gathering research from users as well, and then also getting inspiration from maybe other, similar solutions or applications out there as well. And then you're going to essentially kind of transform that information into a wireframe. And these kind of become like the groundwork that you're going to build and communicate your designs with those people or with those clients. And from there, usually you will take that wireframe and evolve it. So you'll start to add like elements to it, colors eventually, and you land on a more higher fidelity version of that design. So again, a wireframe is a representation of the basic layout of a screen or project. The idea is to establish the content and basic functionality of that. They're usually quick and easy to work on ideas and evaluate things pretty quickly. So again, you don't want to focus on getting it right the first time. You just want to focus on making sure that you are getting those ideas out in a way that's presentable and easy to communicate your ideas across. So things like what the button images look like, no matter as much.
Dancing monkey, some of your tits, bitch.
Words don't have to be, perfect. You just want to make sure that it's like communicated across in a way that kind of makes sense there. Alright. So again, the idea of wireframe is important. Again, it saves you time, so they're a lot quicker to produce than in high fidelity, because you have to spend the time to, create, really nice looking images, find images, get the colors right, buttons right. So wireframe kind of saves you time. You can get ideas out. You can work out your ideas pretty quickly. You create a lot more multiple versions of that. You want to create like 2 or 3 or 4 different versions of your wireframes just to kind of like communicate your ideas of what you're thinking. And then once you kind of define and get like a more solid idea of like what's working, what's not working, getting like refinement, feedback from stakeholders, and you kind of like start to build one of those ideas more and move that one to like a mid fidelity and eventually high fidelity. It also makes it easy to share ideas, talk about options a lot more, and to get approval. So getting approval from a stakeholder is going to be something you'll have to do a lot as a designer. So not spending too much time on those first iterations is important. So you don't spend 2 2 days on something that ends up being shot down. You take the time to create as many options as possible and then work out those kinks. And then once you have final approval, then you kind of move into mock-ups and then eventually prototypes. Alright, and then depending on the work you're doing, there are different levels of fidelity to think about. So there's the idea of, like I spoke about before, the low fidelity going all the way to high fidelity. So when you're designing something, the process usually is you want to start with as less detail as possible, and then you kind of build as you get feedback and refinement. Again, high fidelity ones take a lot more effort and time put together, so don't spend too much time on that in the beginning. Spend time on getting your communication, or getting your ideas out as quickly as possible, and then building on that once you have approval and sign off on the direction that you kind of want to go. Alright, so we're starting here with Sketch. Sketch is essentially the lowest fidelity you could probably get. That's getting an idea out. So starting with the paper pencil idea here. It's easier to kind of do a sketch first, because then if you have a bad idea, you just throw it out or you erase it pretty quickly. So starting with that very basic, sketch is usually the way to go in the beginning, and then from there we'll reach the computer as much as possible. So again, getting used to the habit of sketching stuff out. There's a great book I read when I was like going through my design course that talked about like designing on a napkin. This idea of the paper prototype on a napkin. So you could even go as far as sketching an idea on a napkin or napkins, and then using that as testing with the users as well. So again, it's super like low effort, but again, it's just like quickly testing ideas out before committing that much time to the design. Not hopping on the computer at first. You also want to take the time to kind of sketch your ideas out, work out the kinks before you jump on the computer. Because I think once you get to the computer, we tend to have a tendency to like try to jump high fidelity right away, or you try to refine a lot more, and you're wasting a lot of time on that refinement that might not be necessary without getting the buy-in or getting into user testing and making sure this is actually a good idea and is usable before they commit to those designs. And then going from the sketch to the low fidelity. Low fidelity here is the idea that you have a very basic representation of different elements. So in this example here, you have essentially boxes that kind of represent images. You have like rectangles that represent like where blocks of text will go, circles for images. So again, very, very super low fidelity here, just to kind of get the idea of like your layout you want to get out first. So then typically you go from sketch to a very low fidelity at first. I believe one of the few exercises we're working on in class, one of them does involve going to one of these like breaks of low fidelity. So you'll get to see this a lot more as you kind of go through the course. But the idea here is no text, no color, grayscale, just to get the basic idea of the layout out. And then from there you'll move on to a higher fidelity version of that design. Then moving to the wireframes here. This is what we consider a high fidelity wireframe. So it has again real words in here. The buttons look pretty close to what a button would look like. The final version. Really, the only thing that's missing here is the images. If you notice, they have like a representation of like where the icons would go, and also like a representation of the images. But then they have like buttons. They even go as far as like adding different contrast ratios to the buttons. You can see like where the primary button is supposed to be, the secondary button is supposed to be. There's like other design elements in here that are represented pretty well. But again, it's still grayscale. It's still missing like images and stuff, but getting a lot closer to that final version. So when it comes to things to include in a wireframe, first thing you want to determine is like the desired level of fidelity. If you're doing super early concept and ideas, I recommend sticking to like very low fidelity at the beginning. So using boxes to divide up the page and lines to indicate text. Using a box and X to represent an illustration or photo. And as you get to high fidelity, you'll have to have actual text in there and begin to kind of show like scale and typography placement. But then you can use varying shades of gray as well here, just to kind of avoid that, again, that idea of introducing color too early in that design process until you have a buy-in or approval from that client or internally. And then another big one is annotations. When you're communicating your designs to stakeholders or to like engineers, whoever's building a thing, they'll need to know exactly what your thoughts are and like how things should work. So get used to the idea of like annotating stuff like this is either the specs for the specific thing, these are how things should work. Annotations go a long way with doing that, so that when somebody's building it or they need to review it, they know what your thought process is and what you're thinking here. Versus you trying to explain it to them or them assuming stuff. Again, annotating everything as much as possible are going to be important as well. So when it comes to some best practices for creating wireframes, maybe you want to keep those aesthetics simple as possible. Don't focus too much on the details. Only use one typeface or font. Use only black, gray, or white scale. I've seen those scales well as design, but again, it's that one color scale. Important, and then representing graphics and images with boxes. There's usually no like hard or fast rules around like what that looks like. Might be different for every single person, but the idea is again to keep it as simple as possible. Don't overcomplicate it and focus more on just communicating the idea. That way you can build creatives a lot faster and then save the high fidelity for the end of the process. Any questions so far about wireframing? Has anybody in here done wireframing yet in any other classes or experience? Oh, interesting. All right. I'd say wireframing is probably one of the fastest things to kind of do or pick on. It's very simple kind of layout, but also like sets the groundwork for later. The more you wireframe is the easier it is to get to like a higher resolution version later because you have an idea of where things are going to go already. And you're just kind of replacing like those lower fidelity elements with like actual content. So definitely a good way to kind of like go about approaching your design process.
I mean, we've all done like wireframing when we're planning on how to furnish our apartment, right? Like we just draw where things will go. It's kind of the same.
Exactly. So the idea of like a blueprint, right? Like this is where things should go. Yep, same, good idea. Awesome. All right. So some things to consider here when you're wireframing is the screen size. To always know what screen you're designing for. That should be something you probably know even during like the research phase. So like knowing if they're going to be on a phone, a tablet, or a desktop is going to be important. The kind of device you're designing for, because that might also affect where things go. If you're designing for like say a tablet versus a phone, there's like screen considerations, but there are also considerations of like, is it a website, is it a application? There's certain rules you have to kind of follow based on which is which. Whether it's portrait or landscape. Again, so knowing how to lay out stuff for that, those different layouts are going to be important. In the context of use, so how and where the user will be using it. Is it a busy environment? Is it an environment that's quiet? Is it a library? Exposing there are things you need to know when you're thinking about it as well. Any kind of supported devices that might become important there as well. That might be in addition to what they're doing. Are they using a web browser or not? There's another example of that as well. Alright, so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about components. So we kind of covered components a little bit last week. We made one component in project one. So kind of building on that idea of components. Component is a collection of reusable I'd say items when it comes to design. They're usually guided by some like clear standards and can be a similar to build different applications or like a building block. So whenever you're considering components, you either build your own library. There are usually a lot of libraries available. I know Figma, if you go to the Figma community, there's usually like design or UI kits you could get that are like essentially design components that are pre-built for you that you could use. They're pretty useful when you need to build something pretty quickly. And then usually they'll come with the basic elements that you need. It's like buttons, they'll come with like certain elements, dialogues, and click as well. So depending on what you're designing for, you might be able to find like a kit for Android. You might be able to find a kit for iOS, and then there are other like kits in between that you could also download when you're designing something as well. Alright, so looking at this example on the screen here, here's an example of kind of different components that would make up a design. So you might have a component for the different icons here you see up top. There's also within that component, you know, the idea of a tab. So we use more from like one tab to the other. Tabs are usually also components that are comprised of icons. There's also a search input field as well in here. And then below that, this is a very, very common component called a card. So essentially like houses like usually like content, like smaller content information, like image. You might have some text in here as well. And then to the right here, you have another component called a chip. So a chip is usually a very small, like circular component that has like some kind of icon or a word. You see a lot of chips being used when it comes to like filtering, like on a website or application. And then next to that, you have another component that looks like some kind of like image card, some elements in there as well too. So kind of sky's the limit when it comes to like how you want to use components and kind of where you get your kit from, or you make your own. But once you kind of like master the idea of components, then building your layouts will become a lot faster because it's kind of taking from reusable components and use them in different ways. You're not having to like design or build any of these from scratch every single time you need to design something. So here is another example of that. So the idea that these things are repeated, they're componentized, and then so when you're representing all different screens, you just like look for that, you know, top component and drop that into your pages instead of starting from scratch there. So let's try to identify some of the repeating elements here. So here is a quick visual representation of breakdown of what we just looked at. So there's a navigation bar, which is a component here that has a tab within it. There's a search bar component that has like that search text input field, and then icon to represent filtering. There's the recipe card, which is a card component that has the image, the title of the card, some kind of rating is in here as text, and then there's like additional text below. There's a destination card, which is another powerful card here in this layout. It has the image of the location, and then like some words, and next the title of the location, and like some other information, and then the city card to the right here that shows the another image of the location, and then a title, and then some other additional information below. So these would be considered components. Again, components are standalone pieces or patterns of the design that can be used as often as needed, and consistency into the design process. So usually the hardest part is identifying how many components you actually need, which is going to be a big part of some upcoming projects, at least Project 3, where you gotta start doing that more. But the idea of identifying components, creating as many as you need, and then reusing those across your different screens is going to be important skills to kind of master here in the next few weeks. Alright, when it comes to components, there's the idea of atomic design. Atomic design, essentially, if you think about chemistry class, it's kind of the same concept where you start with like, you know, elements, atoms, elements, molecules, organisms, and you kind of build on there. The idea here is that there are very, very basic building blocks when it comes to like a component. These usually can be drilled down to a certain point, and then past that point, it's no longer, you can no longer break it apart any further, typically, but they're one of those like atomic elements that you kind of start with usually. From there, you kind of build on to a combination of different things. So if you think about like that fab, for example, you might have the icon in there, and you know, those things combined form the navigation component you saw earlier. And then from there, usually when it comes to organisms, it's usually a section of a page. Sometimes you might have maybe a combination of components together on a section of a page that create those organisms. Templates are usually, depending on what you're designing for, those might be the entirety of a page, or it might be most of a page, or a certain section of a page. And then, of course, the pages themselves are also things you could also componentize. So you could have maybe this is a layout for a blog page, and this is a layout for a home page, and then you could reuse those layouts across an entire website. And you could essentially build a website with hundreds of pages if you have got to that point where you're like templatizing different sections and different pages. You could essentially use those templates and build, page layouts out pretty quickly.
Go ahead more.
So like a menu bar would probably be an organism, yeah?
Yes.
Or that would be more like a molecule, more like an organism, yes?
Yes. Alright. Alright. And then when it comes to like a design system, which is kind of the idea of building up a system of like components and rules, here's an example from a brand called Kava. They've defined in here essentially a few different things. So there's like buttons, button styles. I think we talked about this a little bit, where there's like your primary button and secondary button, different kinds of buttons. There's colors usually to be defined as well. So like, what are your primary colors? What are your secondary colors? Logos is overall usually defined. Typography. So what kind of typeface would you be using for this specific brand? Usually it's header and some kind of body copy, which is essentially most of the copy you'll see. It might even have subheads. It might have smaller bits of copy depending on how robust your design system is. It's usually an icon library as well. Icon library should kind of speak to the brand itself, like look and feel, kind of work with your brand. Form fields is another one that you'll see a lot. So input fields, usually forms, and then other from the components as well too. So there's a few examples in here that they use in your system. Here's another example of that here. This is a list of components that you typically see here. So this one is an alert component. So the idea of like, what does an alert look like across your app is in here. Badges, those little chips that I talked about earlier, are a pretty popular one. Buttons again. Whether it's a primary button or a secondary button, what that looks like. Sometimes you might have a caption, usually like below an image. So sometimes you'll have a component for that. Card component, which will usually have a few different things inside of it. And then a checkbox is another popular component as well that you see a lot across apps and websites. If anybody wants an example of that, or a more robust version of that, I'll put a link in the chat as well if you want to take a look later. This is essentially what we just looked at the screenshot from, but it has like a component library. I actually also advise you to check out a few different component libraries, a few popular ones. Google Materials are pretty popular one that you'll see a lot, especially as you get more into the design world. I recommend checking out. I'm gonna go through this site really quick here. This is their Google Materials site, but it has a list of like all their like rules around components and design artifacts here. If you go down here to where it says foundations, you'll see a lot more of the different kinds of things you're supposed to be doing when you use that library. There's a style section here that has like color, icons, typography, etc. And then there's a big component section here which talks about their components that they use across different design systems. So if you have like an Android phone or any kind of like mobile device, they all kind of follow this same or use the same component library. There's like buttons in here. There's Fab, which is a floating action button. There's icons. There's different kinds of split buttons. There's date and time pickers, loading progress, navigation. And the cool thing about these libraries is you kind of like mix and match things together depending on like what kind of screen you're actually laying out. So definitely worth checking these out, getting an idea of kind of how robust you could kind of build out your design system with some different components. And some of these are pretty cool because they'll give you actual interactive components, you can kind of see what they would look like on a website if you were to use them. And then, depending on how tech savvy you are, you may also have like code snippets as well too that they'll drop into those pages when you're building out components. All right, let's move on here. Here's another example here. Again, of a library. This is a design system here. Let's see if this one is a link. This is a guide to the components Figma. I think I showed you that earlier, but going more steps into creating components we did last week, and then creating what's called a variant. So how Figma components work is you can make one version of a component. For example, say you made a button that is purple. You could also say, okay, this is what I want to call like my primary button, right? It's purple. But then I might want to create a secondary button that's black. So then I would make another button color that's black, and I would create what's called a component set. And I would say my primary button is purple, my secondary button is black. That black button would be considered your variant of that button. And so you can build out robust variant libraries like a block there. And then outside of that, you could also like nest variants inside of variants. Perhaps there's a limit when it comes to designing a screen. You essentially would search for that button, and it would pull up that button component. And then usually, if there's a variant for it, then there's a way to like toggle between those different variants to like change the look and feel of that component. That's essentially what a variant is in a nutshell. It's a little more in depth than that, but that's a high level view of kind of what that is. All right. So going back to the idea of components and kind of why they matter. When it comes to components, again, it helps you kind of keep things consistent. So if you have a button component and you create another page, being able to reuse one means that you'll have a consistent look and feel.
What did I do with all my
across
code
your
pencils?
application or your website. Consistency makes things easier and faster to design, but also when it comes to users, consistency builds trust. So when users, see that a primary button does the same thing, this is primary action on the screen, then they'll start to build that trust with you, or that brand. And so when it's consistent, you just kind of up-levels your design and up-levels that experience for the user. Speeds up the design of your pages, so once you have those like sections, those page templates, etc., you can quickly build other pages and swap out content pretty quickly without having to start from scratch every time. And then it makes changes easier. So again, last week when we did project 1, you need to make a change to the style of a certain part of the component to make that change and quickly reflect across every other instance of that component. So again, it just kind of gives you more power over making edits pretty quickly without having to go to each page and make it change individually.
I got a quick question.
Yes.
Is it possible to like change every instance of a component with another component?
What do you mean?
So, like, say you didn't want to update all the components at once and you wanted to prototype like a new design for a component. Once you were satisfied with that new component, would you have to go into each instance of the component to like replace it, or is there a way to like replace all across the whole file?
So you mean you made one component, but then you wanted to change just an instance of the component?
No, so change every instance of the component, but not immediately. So you create a separate component. Is that making sense?
So it sounds like you're talking about a variant. So you might have a variant. So you go my step button example. You might have like two variants of like one component. You could change the variant, one of the variants, and if that variant has instances somewhere else, then those variant instances will change.
Okay.
But the original one would still be the same.
Okay.
That probably wasn't a satisfactory
Does that answer your question?
I think so.
See, I think so.
Would that open up a situation where for each instance that you would choose which variant you want to apply?
Yeah, so essentially you would pick the
Yeah, I
component.
think so.
and tell it
That means
what
no.
you use for that instance of it. So you might have two variants, but you just tell, okay, I want you to use my secondary variant for all of the instances, and it would change.
Okay.
Those
Yes.
instances.
Yes. That definitely
Yeah.
answers my question. Cool.
Yeah. answer your question, Jonathan, yes, it's like a theme kind of, but I would say it's a little bit smarter than a theme because it's more automated. Like you just have to change the root of whatever that is, and it reflects usually the theme. You can reuse a theme, but you still have to kind of go back and like swap out a different theme. This one is more automated, where it pushes out for you in that instance. All right. So spend a little bit of time on layout grids. Has anybody used layout grids before in any kind of digital design or in print or anything?
I've encountered it in general studies, but I haven't really worked with it that much.
Okay, yep. So the idea of the layout grids essentially is in the design system, you could also define like a layout for a certain page, or you could even go as far as saying, I want to use X amount of like space between like each element. Once you establish like layout grids, it also kind of helps to speed up your like overall like page layout, because then things are almost like kind of fitting into like, you think about like Lego, for example, like they'll only fit a certain way. Once you set out your layout grids, you can tell it how many columns you want to have, how many rows, and then you just have to drop things into those different slots. It also makes it a lot easier and a lot neater to kind of lay out a page pretty quickly. So here's an example of a layout here. The thick lines kind of represent where the layout grids are. Can anybody tell me that left panel how many columns are on there?
Or
Correct. Yeah, so there's 4 columns here, and then there's, let's call it gutter in between each one. So the spaces between each column. And essentially with a grid like this set up, it'd be easier for you to like lay out like, okay, I want to have, text take up 3 columns, and then, image take up 1. And then to the one to the right, you could also like define, okay, maybe I want my header to only take up like 1 column, and then the rest of it is for the image. It gives you a lot more options, but they all kind of work really well because they are all fitting within that grid pretty well. They're essentially a lot more popular, or became popular during the print heyday. So a lot of people were using grids back when print was a huge thing, but they kind of translated over to digital work. So you'll still see a lot of layout use some kind of grid system. Figma also has its own grid system as well too. Check it out, I'll show you a little bit later as well. I don't like stuff with grid Figma, but it is still a widely used tool when it comes to layout. Oh, sorry, here's another example of a grid here. So the image to the left is kind of the final version, and the one to the right has the grid overlay, kind of showing you like how many columns are in there. So this one looks like it has maybe, let's say maybe 12 columns. Has you notice here when you turn off the grid, it's kind of all hard to see, but everything kind of fits neatly within that grid system. So even the form field at the top left there in the hero section, the edge kind of lines up with the content below. Below there are 12 columns, and each one of those like image cards in that first like left section all take up 3 columns respectively there. And then below that they have another like layout set up where it's like there's a header here that spans like 4, and then below that there's one that spans like 6 of those columns, and then 6 to the right. So again, pretty easy way to lay out the document. It looks very neat, it looks very organized, and for a professional thing, they use that layout as a good way to put all their content into place. The other beautiful thing about grids is it allows you to start to think about responsive design. So responsive design is the idea that you can kind of take a desktop application or website, scale it down to a mobile screen and back up. Once you define what your grid is, it makes it a lot easier for you to then determine like where you want to put stuff on like a smaller screen, like a tablet or a mobile device. If you go back to the idea of like even the 12-column grid system, you might say, okay, on desktop, spend X amount of columns. As I go down to tablet, you might have less space, but then you can kind of determine what the width of that section is. And then on mobile, when you have at that point, maybe 4 columns across, you then will know like where you can kind of like break stuff without to like stack on top of each other in a way that makes sense.
Shapes.
So having a grid system in place allows you to do that a lot more effectively
Shapes.
than not having a grid system.
Shapes.
Alright, so let's see. And there's a video here. I'm not sure if the video is working, but I'm going to quickly show you myself actually how grids kind of work in Figma. Pretty straightforward. Share my Figma file here in a minute, and I'll show you kind of what that looks like. Alright, can you all see my Figma screen? Alright, so I'm gonna create a new design file here. Since you have any saved ones here, there's options here. But similar to like what you did with the typography from last week and with the colors, you could also set up layout grids and save them, and then reuse them later if you want to. So we're gonna make one from scratch here. So I'm gonna go to the plus sign here for layout guide. I'm gonna press that. I'm gonna get a few different options here. Usually by default, depending on how yours is set up, you're gonna have grid as an option. This 10 just means that each one of these little tiny boxes are 10 by 10. But we don't want to add a grid today here. We want to add a layout. So we're gonna switch this drop down here, and we're gonna choose.
Did I miss the dance?
Here.
You missed
There's also
you
an
sending
option
me
for
your
rows
tits.
also. You want to do rows, but we're gonna stick with columns for this example.
You also missed the
So
shapes.
right now I have a 5-column layout in here. I'm gonna change this
Shapes.
to 12, and now I have 12 columns here. So you'll notice right away that there's different types of layouts. You have the left, which kind of switch to the left. There is right. There is center. Stretch. What stretch does is it basically stretches all your columns all the way across so that they're the even same amount of size, even sizes, and also like they stretch the end to end. The other thing you can kind of do here is you can also add a margin. So margin is the spaces on either side of the columns. Right now there isn't a margin, so they're all kind of going end to end. The gutter, which is the space between each one of these columns, is 20. I'm gonna change this margin to 20.
You want to see them so bad? Not really.
On the edges as well. And then from here, what I can do is I could essentially create a new layout style. So going back to that little icons here and clicking the plus sign here, I'm gonna create a new layout style. We'll call it 12 column grid. And I'm gonna create a style. So now I have a 12 column grid layout style. Now how Figma layout guides work is they essentially overlay on top of like whatever layout you have on your page. So you could
Yo,
essentially
thank you for thank you for the follow. We'll donate for booty.
add a rectangle.
So that's not gonna happen. But hey, I appreciate the follow.
Whenever you hover over where like a layout grid is, you'll notice that these lines, orange lines, will appear, and it will like snap into place. And so you could essentially pretty quickly add, a low fidelity like layout if you wanted to here. Just kind of using those grids, those layouts you just created, and then you can tell it how many columns you want to span. So this one is spanning 5. I can say I want this one to span the remaining here, and they're still like being true to that grid that I have in place there. I wanted to say add like a representation of text. I can make it really
Have a good stream. All right, go fuck yourself.
box here. I can replicate that a few times if I want to as well. But you'll notice pretty quickly here that I could start to then lay out a wireframe pretty fast. Now if I wanted to see what it looks like without the 12 column grid here, I can essentially just hit this and it'll remove the grid. I can kind of see what it looks like without it. Since I did have a style saved, if I click in here, I should be able to come back in here and access my style that I saved, and it'll come back as well. I also have the ability to edit it as well. So if I decided I want to eventually come in here and change edit, you could pick, you know, whatever color you want to use for your layout. I like to stick to the pink and red ones because that's what I'm used to, but you could use essentially the colors you want there as well for your layout grid. Any questions about that so far? You could also show and hide layout guides as well too from your top menu. So pretty useful stuff there. I think it'll be pretty helpful as you design out pages, and it works with tablet, you know, desktop, whatever size you have. You essentially use the layout grids there to define what those look like. And you'll be doing that in one of the projects, I believe, as well too. You have to define, I believe, the tablet. I think one of the projects you have to define the tablet and mobile, or the desktop and mobile. I forget off the top of my head, but there's one project for sure that you have to kind of do that in. So practice working layout grids as much as possible so you get to that project. Should be second nature to you when you get to that point.
This chick really said have a good stream.
Share my
While thirst trapping this entire time.
Alright, can you all see that presentation again? Cool. Alright, so this is kind of a little bit of what I just covered here, but essentially just kind of zooming in on that idea of the settings that you could affect here. So there's the changing it to the columns first in the drop down, and then picking the amount of columns you want. You change the color overlay you want to use, opacity as well here, the type of grid you want to use, whether you want to use like left, right. I like to use stretch one at a margin. You could also set up the gutters, etc. Alright, some other things here that are going to become important as you get further along in design is this idea of setting up the, what I like to call the spacing within your design. So there's the idea of the layout, and then there's also spacing rules you may want to follow. Some design systems might follow very rigid ones, like an 8-pixel spacing rule where the smallest element of space is 8. You might bump it up to 16, and then 24, 32, 40. So pretty common, you'll see a lot. A lot of times you find what will happen is once you set up those like rules for like spacing, when you're creating a new component, then it's a lot easier to kind of like set up those rules and then have the component follow those rules. So you might say, for example, the space around, or the, you know, the padding around all elements of this component should follow, you know, maybe 24 pixel padding or whatever. It gets a little more complicated than that,
shapes.
But essentially,
Endless
once you
shapes.
set that up, creating new components becomes easier, and then when you're like deciding between the space between other things within your layout, if you're like limited to a certain rule, then you'll get a lot more consistent with like the spacing. Because it's either going to be like one of these numbers, right? It will never be a weird or odd number, and you can systematically kind of plan out like based on when it comes back to the idea of like the law of like proximity. Then the proximity would be determined by following like one of these specific spaces. Like, okay, if everything that's like 16 pixels space is like by proximity belong in the same kind of area. If it goes beyond that, then maybe I go to 32 or 40. It just makes it a lot easier to plan out layouts once you kind of like start to incorporate this kind of idea into your designs. Another thing to kind of think about here is the blocks, which I showed a little bit of before in the layout. So once you have your layout set up, you can quickly figure out like the blocks of things, like the different areas for things, whether it's like images. You might want to use it for a section if you want to as well. Based on how many columns I have, I want to have 3 sections that go across my screen here. You could mix and match like the width of the blocks, the height, everything else, but this kind of makes it easier to do that without you having to kind of like, you know, eyeball it or guess. You have the grid there to kind of like lock things into place, and you can quickly figure out where stuff goes. There's a lot of good resources when it comes to like grids as well. I'm gonna share one of the links here that's in this slide deck for y'all to kind of look at. But there's like tons of resources on like laying out different pages. Actually have a book that I read when I was in school that has like all the different kinds of layouts you could possibly have when it comes to like print. Get ideas pretty quickly from there. Another good place to get inspiration when it comes to layouts is, believe it or not, like magazines. If you're like pick up a magazine or look at a magazine, you get a ton of interesting ideas from like for layouts or magazines as well. I think print still does a really good job with like being creative layouts, and so whatever you can do there to kind of ideas, I recommend like expanding your horizons beyond just like websites and apps, and kind of looking at other forms of like media and see how they treat layouts as well. Alright, and then this is kind of talks more about the columns again. So the idea of like knowing what your columns are, your content width for your entire page, and then once you know like what these are, you can quickly kind of plan out again how much you want to span your content. When it comes to like responsive websites or apps, it's important to define early the amount of columns you're going to need. So again, if you have a 12, you can start to plan for tablet. Usually tablet will go down to eight columns, and then mobile will go down to 4. So again, when you're designing out your layouts for your different screens, consider like if you had less space, if you had 8, at 12, if you dropped down from 12 to 8, how many columns will that content take up? If I go down to 4, how many of those will take up are going to become important. So again, just like planning that stuff ahead of time makes it easier when it comes to like responsive stuff later, because you've already thought about like on a mobile screen what that will look like and how much space you're going to have left to make those elements kind of work. Any questions? I'll come for a little bit here about layouts for columns or anything come to mind. Alright. And then margins, which I talked about earlier as well here, is the idea of the space that exists on either end of your layout. So if you stretch your column across a certain width, adding the margins kind of sets that white space on either side, and then when you move your layouts, then you have a little bit of breathing room on either side of your document. Alright. So to kind of quickly recap here, talk about what wireframes are, and then Figma is primarily what you're going to be using here for software when it comes to wireframes, and then when it comes to what they should be very low fidelity. Again, just to kind of give me your ideas. I recommend starting with sketches first, and then moving on to low fidelity there, and then fidelity eventually, kind of high fidelity there. So I think we're going to stop for today when it comes to this lecture.
Oh shit, my camera
If
stopped.
you have any questions about this stuff for next class, feel free to let me know in Blackboard. Let me see if there's anything else I want to cover with y'all tonight. While I do so, did everybody get a chance to turn in Project 1 today? Great. Awesome. Alright, so I think that's actually where we're going to stop tonight. Let me give y'all some time back to kind of start to put together your materials for Project 2. Remember that one is due right away. You have some time on that one, but spend time to watch those videos and read the materials on the different principles, so that when you get to the example section, you're not like trying to figure out what to use. Let's see. I think apart from that, we should be good. We could break here for tonight, and then I will see y'all back here at 6 p.m. next week. Alright, y'all. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you all next week.
Alright, thank you. Have a good week.
Alright. You too. Bye.
Thank you, pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.
camera's fucked. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Camera's fucked. The camera is fucked. No more camera. Shit. Well, ain't that some shit? It's because the fucking camera overheats. That's why. Video capture fucking device. Where are you?